Today's program is something that is really relevant and has been requested by numerous attendees. It is the remote work challenge for commercial real estate property management. And as always, we have our leadership and commercial real estate expert, Kirk Anderson, on the line, one of the nicest guys in the business. So always happy to have you on the line, Kirk. And thanks for being on the line today, everybody.
Thank you, Justin, and hello, everybody. So let's start off with this first slide that is bullet pointing a number of different things that we're all probably familiar with by now. We're seeing this reported in the media quite a bit these days. The large numbers of people who are working remotely who are terrified of the notion of coming back to the office. Maybe terrified isn't the right word to use, but maybe the employers are terrified that the employees won't want to return to the office. So to put this in context, let's take a look at this next slide, which is really from the World Economic Forum. It was published or collected by the Pew Research Center, so definitely a reliable research outfit. And this gives you a sense of the amount of telework that existed in the U.S. economy prior to the pandemic. So this was 2019 data. And as you can see here, not all work can be done remotely. So when we talk about remote work, just how much of the U.S. workforce are we really talking about? Let's look at this third slide. The U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics is reporting that during the past year, so this is 2020, 22 to 25% of workers across all industries are working remotely. Now, this is, again, I'll remind you, this is during the pandemic. If you want to see where that was before COVID, we're talking about 7%. Now, that 7% number looks pretty good and pretty accurate when compared with the information on this prior slide that shows all of the different sectors or segments of the economy and how much of that workforce has access to remote work. So I give you this information for context because the media is putting out a story that can be very, very difficult to track to reality, and it's causing a lot of concern and a lot of focus on remote work. And what I'm really going to be focusing on here is that I don't think that remote work is the main issue. I think the main issue here is going to be addressing what people, your employees, really want out of the work experience. And I think remote work is being embraced by that population right now because it's giving them access to a lot of the things that they've been wanting for a very long time. So let's start to take a closer look at that. Employees have been aspiring to certain things for a very long time. And as we go through this list of bulleted items, I think you'll see that remote work is maybe tied to some of them because it fulfills those needs. It fulfills those aspirations. But I think that personally, remote work for a lot of people, it's not something that they really enjoy. It can be very isolating, and you've got to work really hard to overcome those feelings of isolation. There are things that we as human beings, based on the way we're built, that we need to have as part of our experience on a regular basis. That's why I'm a big believer that the office isn't going anywhere. Physical space and proximity for people is important. Does that mean that I don't believe in remote work? Well, no, because I've been doing it myself since 2005. So there's a lot of pluses there. My point in all this is that if you as a manager or a leader, if you mobilize your team and you guys put your blinders on and you just start focusing on remote work, I think you're missing the boat. Okay? I think these bulleted items on this slide right here are what your people really want. And so the real thing for you to do is to connect your remote work strategy to these things. So let's go through this. 1, feeling valued and trusted by leadership and coworkers. That's huge. Okay? Now, you and I, we probably read some of the same stuff. There are some organizations when they're thinking about the remote work future, they're thinking, well, gosh, how are we going to know if our people are really honestly doing work, right? Well, right there, that's a trust issue, isn't it? Because if you trusted your people, you wouldn't even think about that, right? You might think about it as a way to take someone who maybe wasn't performing, wasn't producing the outcomes, and try to find out, well, where's the breakdown, right? But who hires the people in the company? Well, leadership hires the people. So if you don't trust your people, that's a hiring issue. It might also be a leadership issue. And again, back to what you've heard me say a lot of times in the past is that as a leader, we have to ask ourselves first. We have to look to ourselves first when things aren't going the way we want them to go. Where could we be doing something that could improve this situation? So I'm not a big fan of all of the different technical ways to just monitor people and make sure they're sitting at their desk. What I learned in leading long ago was that it's far more effective for me as a leader if I focus on outcome. And if I focus on making sure that I'm very clear about what my people are counted on for, what those outcomes need to look like, and what the expectations are around those outcomes, right? By when are we expecting a certain result? If I do my job and I do that, then I'm still not done. What I then need to do is I've got to go back and I got to let my people know how they're doing, right? How are they doing against the outcome? If you got into a car that had no instrumentation, or better yet, an airplane, let's say that you're walking onto an airplane, you look in the cockpit and there's no instrumentation in there. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't feel so good about getting on that plane because I want to make sure the pilot has feedback mechanisms to know whether they're on course or not. So without feedback, your people aren't really going to know if they're on course. So part of a leader's job is to provide the feedback. Also, what kind of support do your people need? And this is a delicate thing. You don't want to be micromanaging and looking over people's shoulder all the time. And that's a very individual thing. So it's having enough relationship with your people to know how much support and guidance do they need before they feel like you're micromanaging them. I think people are also looking for consistency in their leaders. They're looking for authenticity in their leaders. People are looking for a sense of purpose behind the work that they're doing. What's the big why, right? What is it that allows someone to connect with a higher purpose and connect their passion to that work and bring their passion, lead their passion into that job? That's a leader's responsibility, in my view, to kind of help make that connection for people. This is really, really an important element. And again, I think if you put your blinders on and you just look at, well, we got to develop a remote working strategy, and you're not aware of these motivations on the part of your employee base, you're going to be missing some things. You're likely to create a remote working strategy that ends up creating more problems than not. Because let's not forget, leaders aren't doing so well in many of the areas that we looked at on that bulleted list. Look at these statistics. Only 22% of employees strongly agree that the leadership in their organization has a clear direction for the organization. That was one of our bullet points. 15% of employees strongly agree the leadership of their organization makes them feel enthusiastic about the future. Motivation, inspiration, right? What's the why, right? If people have a why, they're going to be enthusiastic about the future. 13% of employees strongly agree the leadership of their organization communicates effectively with the rest of the company. And you can go through the rest of these on your own, but the last one I'll comment on, 89% of bosses wrongly believe that their employees quit because they want more money, while studies show that only 12 to 19% of people leave with money as the primary reason. So what that demonstrates to me is a tremendous gap in relationship where leadership in most organizations is really disconnected from what their employees are looking for, which gets back to what I've been saying about remote work and the challenge around that. They like the remote work experience because it gives them a lot of the other things that they're looking for. It's harder for their boss to micromanage them, right? They have some flexibility, right? Because there's some distance between them and the office. Just think what you could do for your organization. If you could address these bullet pointed areas for both people working remotely and people working in the office, just think what that would do for your organization. People still crave. I mean, the numbers that I've seen in the research are all fairly high for the number of people who are just craving being back around other people. So I think that that's common for all people. We want to be in community with each other. So I think that, again, the office is going to have a place in our hearts and minds for a very long time. The tools that we have to provide leadership as leaders have not changed. And again, for those of you who have attended the prior sessions 5 and 6 on communication, this will look familiar to you. Those who are new and you haven't seen that, I encourage you to go back and watch courses 5 and 6, where we cover the communication skills. This will be explained in detail. But basically, the point here is that the toolkit that we have to provide leadership is how we move our bodies, which is basically all of our extraverbal communication, right? It's the paralanguage, which is the tone and timbre of our voice, and it's the nonverbal cues, everything we do with our hands and how we stand and the look on our face and everything else. And then finally, it's the words that we use. 93% of all human communication is extraverbal. Only 7% is verbal. So we're missing a lot when we aren't able to kind of be in proximity to one another. Things where we can see each other's faces helps, but it's not the same, right? Our toolkit is how we move our bodies. It's how we use our senses, interpret that data, and it's the conversations that we have with ourselves and others continuously. That's all that happens in the domain of action, which is the physical domain, and it's the moment of now. It's all that ever happens with respect to human beings. Now, trust me, this was first given to me decades ago from neurophysiologists out of the Stanford Research Institute. And I when this was first brought up in the class, I pulled the guy aside and I took him to task on this. I didn't believe it. Trust me, it's true. This is all that really ever happens. It's all that we have the ability to manage, which is our communication. So those tools haven't changed since the dawn of time, and they're not changing. Remote work isn't going to change that. Working remotely just brings additional challenge to how we communicate. And for leaders, this means that we have to be aware of those challenges so that we can fill the gaps, right? So what do we try to fill the gaps with? Well, one of the first things is we got to try to understand, where are people? Are they at risk or are they at stake? So being at stake focuses on the opportunity. Being at risk is focused on the fears. So when you're at risk, you're all interested in protecting the status quo. People don't want anything to change in the company because nobody wants anybody in leadership to point a finger at them and say, who screwed this up, right? When you're at risk, it's all about method over outcome. So I stand that leaders who are all concerned about how much time their people are spending during the day on something, or whether or not they're sitting at their desk for 8 hours a day and they're getting all of that dedication of time, right, that they're quote unquote getting paid for. If you're concerned about method, I think you got to step back and take a look at, what are you really afraid of, right? What's the outcome? Shouldn't you be more concerned about the outcome and not the method? When I was in high school, I played football, and I can remember being in the huddle, and the quarterback for our team was calling the plays, and in come a late runner from the sideline, and the coach wanted a certain play to be run. And when the quarterback heard the play, he goes, no, we're not doing that. We're doing this. Okay. Now the game was on the line, right? This is one of those moments, right? And so we ran the play that the quarterback called and we scored and we won the game. Everybody's ecstatic. We go over to the side of the bench, and I happened to be right next to the quarterback. And the coach came up and grabbed the face mask of that quarterback and wrenched him over to the bench, practically threw him onto the bench, and just stood there and screamed him out. Now, what do you think happened to the reputation of that coach for me and all of the other people on the team who saw what he did to that quarterback? Yeah, I mean, he immediately lost our respect. We won the game. We got the desired outcome. What's the problem? For him, it was all about method. He wanted to be the one that had the control, and he wanted to be the one that had the say over what the play was. And the quarterback denied him having that experience. So he was all pissed at the quarterback. But you see, if you're a leader and you're focused on method, you're focused on the wrong stuff. Because your people, you want your people to bring their brain to work. And you want them to use it. You're paying good money for their brain, not just their body. So as a leader, you want to really work at mobilizing that intelligence. You don't want to shut it down, right? So when people are working remotely, as a leader, you're going to have to think about some creative ways in which you have that ongoing communication with your people, where you ask them, well, how's it going? Is there anything you see here that you think we could do better to make you more productive and effective in what you're doing? So many times I see leaders who think that they are the ones who have to come up with the ideas, and they don't ask their people. So my point is that you don't have to stop. You don't have to stop at your ideas. Certainly you want to generate your own ideas, but you want to go and throw them out there to your people and say, what do you think? Now, there's also this concept I mentioned before, which is around how things occur for people. You're all probably familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of fundamental human needs. This is taught in high schools and colleges, and anytime we're dealing with psychology courses, Maslow is right there in the mix. And it's easy to dismiss, but I will tell you, this has been one of the most helpful tools for me in leading and managing organizations, is to understand how what we're doing as an organization is affecting where people are in terms of their hierarchy of needs. So briefly, the physiological needs are basically air, water, food, shelter, getting enough sleep, what you need to survive. Safety needs are also survival-oriented needs. It deals with being here tomorrow, out of a sense of personal security, having a job, etc. Love and belonging. This deals with our social connection and sense of belonging, sense of being part of a community. Esteem, it's self-respect, it's respect for others, it's status and recognition. And then finally, self-actualization, which is the desire to become the best that you can be at whatever that is. But self-actualization also means that you're at a point where you're kind of looking around you and you want to bring everything up, right? You want to help self-actualize everything and everybody. Think about where COVID has put us all. Think about the people who are struggling now with physiological safety and belonging needs in ways they never were before. It's huge. If you want higher performance from your organization, the people in that organization need to be high in their fundamental human need realization or fulfillment. As a leader, you want to look at your organization, you want to realize that psychologically people are struggling. So as a leader, we need to kind of have some compassion for that. But more importantly, we've got to develop strategies where we can get people plugged in and use the organization to help lift people into that love and belonging, lift them into that recognition of their esteem and reconnect with that, and bring them up to that self-actualization level so that they can start looking around themselves at their coworkers and really honestly and authentically want to serve those people and create value for them. Because if we don't find a way to do that as leaders, it's not going to happen. People are going to stay stuck down in those lower levels of fulfillment. You might say, okay, great, Kirk, this is all great. It's warm and fuzzy. I'm feeling really good now. Thank you. But you know what? I got a business to run. So what's best for my people is not always what's best for the business. Correct. Exactly right. Welcome to the challenge of leadership. Welcome to dichotomies. No surprise. That's why leaders get the big bucks, right? Because leaders have to solve these dichotomies all day long. It's a tough job. I'm not saying it's not. I mean, I've had to do it for a lot of my career. It is difficult. It's challenging. It can be heartbreaking at times. So how do you address those things? Well, you invite people into the dichotomy. Leaders do not have to be the answer people all the time. You don't have to have it there ready to just pull out of your pocket and throw at your people and go, here you go, do this. That's not leadership. Leadership is mobilizing that intelligence of your people. So I understand we all deal with confidentiality issues and things of that nature. But, as a leader, you got to look for being as open and transparent with your people as possible and invite them into helping you resolve some of these issues. And coming up with a remote work plan and coming up with ways to address those bullet points that I've outlined earlier, this is how I'm suggesting you do it. Don't try to do it all yourself because it will fail. Not because you're not smart. A lot of you are a lot smarter than me. But it doesn't matter because your IQ, no matter how smart you are, it's not going to be as high as the IQ of you plus your team. Let people see some of the mess, right? Let them see and understand what you're confronted with. Give them a peek under the curtain now and then, right? Because if you're trying to develop your future leaders, that's going to teach them some really valuable things, right? And it's going to help you mobilize that intelligence. So let's take a look at an example, okay? Disconnects between staff that are working remotely and people that are working on site. Now, this isn't unique to the commercial real estate industry. A lot of other industries have the same kind of thing, particularly those that are in manufacturing environments. In the commercial real estate industry, you've got your building engineer community, and then you have your real estate manager and your admins and your accountants and so on, the people that quote unquote get to sit at home and work while the engineers have to be here on site holding everything together, right? The manager and the admins get to enjoy flexibility during their workday, running personal errands and stuff while I'm here. I have to be here on site working through all these work orders. The important people get to work remotely. Those of us working on site are treated like slaves. Whenever I try to reach the manager, they're never available. So obviously they don't care about me. Where are these conversations coming from? They're coming from a place of unfulfilled need. They're coming from a place of people who feel that they are somehow different from the rest of the community. I'm suggesting that we need to think about how all of the hype and all of the focus around remote work in our society is affecting those people who can't share in that experience. So if the leader doesn't compassionately start to think from that place, then you're going to miss the opportunity to really address the fundamental needs that are being assaulted in creating those other conversations. This is people's biology at work, and it's exacerbated today because everything's sitting on the back of all of the COVID stuff and all of the suffering really that people are going through in having their lives turned upside down. You're trying to develop your remote work strategy. You need to incorporate an understanding of some of these other things that are really affecting people, because that's going to affect how they see what you come forward with. Some advice for thinking about remote work is don't isolate the remote work strategically. My advice to you is look at these bulleted things And use these bulleted things as a start, but go talk to your people and find out what they value, what they need, what's missing for them. And the picture will start to come clear for you. You'll start to see where, oh, all right, it's those things that they really want. Remote work is a vehicle for them to try to get those things. You want to put the conversation down where the real need is, where what's valued resides. Remote work, in my opinion, it's a vehicle. It's a way people are getting the things that are important to them. So if you look at it that way, then I think you're going to have a much more productive and successful approach to developing your organization's strategy around remote work. That's my dog and pony show for the day. Justin, I think we're home free.
Perfect. Seeing lots of thank yous come in. Everybody, great to see you all.
Thanks, everybody.